Break your wall, Countersurveil standing tall. Together we decode it all. Tune into the sound waves, secrets of the dark maze. Dark codes in the nighttime, information, power lines. We're free in the spotlight.
Hello, and welcome to the Countersurveil Podcast, the first in a series of podcasts featuring Nathan, myself, Karen, Andrew, and a host of others, where we'll be discussing a series of different information security related, Web3 related, and other topics. Hopefully, we do you right and give you some really good information that you can use to better yourself, your life, your company. So, starting out here, my name is Frank Trezza. Handle here, Trez, at least for the day. I work as a senior security engineer during the day for a Fortune 500 company. I also run my own business called Steel Trezza and Associates. We just had a good ad here. This is Adrian popping in. Adrian Crenshaw, the IronGeek himself. IronGeek, welcome to the cast.
How's it going? I'm probably going to drop off and rejoin from my laptop in a second. I didn't realize that you weren't going to change the URL to actually access StreamYard. So,
Yes. So feel free to do that and hop back in at your leisure.
all right, I'll be back shortly.
Sounds good, bro. So I am, some people call me a hacker. It's not a term I use for myself. I am very curious about computer security, have been for most of my life, and I have gotten in trouble doing stupid things. But now I don't get in trouble. I don't stop necessarily doing stupid things, though. Nathan is here. He runs at least he did run the blockchain village at DEF CON. Nathan's actually one of the reasons I moved out here to Vegas. He invited me to talk at one of his conferences called the Crypto Shit Show. And that conference certainly lived up to its name. However, I kind of fell in love with Vegas, despite the fact having been here every summer for many, many years to go to DEF CON anyway. But having a little bit of extra time to actually explore it, it's one of the reasons I moved here. So I have Nathan to thank for that, or blame for that, depending on how you frame it. Karen and Andrew here are some wonderful people local to Las Vegas that I met, who I'm actually planning on doing another podcast with on Wednesdays going forward. Andrew and Karen, why don't you guys introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, my name is Andrew. I recently founded a AI blockchain company where we're focused on distributed, decentralized computing power to keep up with the demand needs for LLM model training. So security is, very paramount to us. That's one of the reasons I wanted to be on the show today, to really showcase, like, when we're all connected to these decentralized networks. I mean, our internal resources are at risk. So happy to be here. Thank you.
Absolutely. And it's always important to understand your threat model. That's one of the things we'll be covering today. Adrian just joined us, the IronGeek himself. Adrian, in my opinion, is one of the best people in InfoSec, even though he really is kind of, how do you put it, disenfranchised with the bullshit that goes on within our community and the games that people play. Adrian and I go way back. I was a member of Adrian's podcast, the IronGeek Cast, for a number of years. I pretty much did the InfoSec news segment each week, and we all shot the shit together. We put out, I think, over maybe 300 casts in all, one a week for quite a while. Adrian can definitely introduce himself and who he is a bit better, but in my opinion, what makes him one of the best is we always had these conferences going on for a long time. Nobody thought, hey, I should record this and make sure that we save this knowledge so that it doesn't just disappear into the ether. And he started the whole process. He was the first guy to do it, setting up a camera at a conference, recording it, recording the slides too, making a really nice presentation. He developed the whole methodology to do that, recorded multiple conferences, put them all online for free for everybody to use. And he's also pretty knowledgeable technically. Great guy, and also a big old teddy bear. Adrian, why don't you give a little bit of a rundown on yourself?
I don't know whether I'm the first person to do it. I've known others who have done it as well. But I'm Adrian. I run IronGeek.com. It hasn't been updated in a while since I haven't been invited to record many conferences recently. Work a day job in InfoSec, and I enjoy learning new things. That's about it for me.
You sell yourself short. There's so much more to you than that, but good intro.
All right, let me introduce myself because Andrew took my full term. He took my full time there. So hey, I'm Karen. Have me here as an OSINT specialist. It's kind of an easy way to kind of just categorize the all the things that I'm kind of involved in, which is kind of anything and everything. Got the technical background, and I work with Andrew for the blockchain, so kind of been integrating everything that I can, basically kind of just predicting the future here with all the tech that we have at our disposal right now, and then also always being aware of the risks that we face, so that makes it pretty exciting.
Absolutely. I remember the first time I met Karen was at one of my friend Mike's things here out in Vegas, and at the time she showed me her phone. She actually had like a Python interpreter installed right on the phone, and I was like, man, that's pretty freaking cool for somebody at one of these blockchain events to even know what Python is, let alone have an interpreter on their phone and be running like different scripts and stuff to do things.
Which was it? Was it the Alpine one?
Yeah, I think it was. It might have been the phone you had before that, but it's been a bit.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's what got our network hacked.
It may well have been.
I know.
But she did show you the graph. I thought you were talking about Graphene, the OS that she flashed on there, which is pretty great.
If nobody has heard of the Graphene OS, it's definitely worth checking out. It's really cool, open source, real easy to get onto most of the Google phones. I think, Frank, we told you to get that.
You did indeed. Yeah, Graphene's fairly solid. I used to screw around with phone ROMs and have a few brick phones as a result. One of my favorite back in the day was called Paranoid Android. It really locks stuff down very well. But I think there's tons of different ROMs out there. There's a whole trust model that comes to that stuff, making sure that you know who put the thing together that you're putting on your phone in the first place. Because you're literally installing a replacement operating system on your phone that was compiled by somebody who uploaded it to a forum. So there's a lot of trust that goes in that, and
so
not necessarily a good code audit process in place all the time. But I digress. Let's move over to Nathan Hawk. Nathan, is your audio working?
I don't know. You tell me.
I can hear you. Well, that's a good first
Holy
step.
Shit. Well, hi, everybody. Thanks for coming here. I suppose you're all wondering why I gathered you here today. I wanted to go over a whole bunch of basic InfoSec terminology for people in the crypto and blockchain space, because I'm seeing a big, ever worsening divergence between best security practices and understanding of them and what's actually being, rushed to market in spite of that knowledge being readily available. So, like Frank mentioned earlier, one of the founders of the blockchain stage, as seen at DEF CON. I was one of the founders of the IoT stage on there, and before that, volunteered in the wireless stage. So I've been around InfoSec quite a bit, but I'm not here to say that I'm a hacker. I'm not. What I am is a guy who has very intimate knowledge of how that industry functions and interoperates with other industries, and how blockchain, which I'm very passionate about, and cryptocurrency, which I'm very passionate about, should be interfacing, and they're not. And we're going to try to remediate some of that nonsense today, just by going over some terminologies.
Excellent.
All right. So are we jumping right into this? We did our introductions. Are we ready to go?
Yeah, I'll let you take the helm, Nathan.
All right, fantastic. Do you think that we're going to have any other people on today that were supposed to be handling certain questions, or we're just...
So I just heard back from our friend Nina. Unfortunately, she cannot make it today. She is stuck in BHV planning meetings, but she would be happy to join the next time we cast. So we can perhaps delay some of the questions we would have asked her, or redirect them to Andrew, who might know some of those answers as well, as a co-founder of a Web3 company that deals with AI stuff.
Okay, well, go ahead, Andrew.
Oh, I was just going to say, I also mentioned it to one of my buddies who is an engineer at Qualys. So I'm not sure how familiar you are with those guys, but he said he would join at some point. So maybe not this show, but the next.
Okay, fantastic. All right, well, let's start off with one of the workhorses. Frank, Adrian, one of you guys. What would you say a customer should expect to experience in an ongoing security engagement?
Great question. That entirely depends on what type of security engagement it is, and there's a really big difference between the different types of engagements that are out there. We have penetration tests, which a lot of companies require like once or twice a year, depending on their reporting requirements. Pen tests are really cool, and they're kind of my bread and butter at my company. These tend to be engagements that are about 2 weeks long, where your penetration tester, your tester, is going to look over your environment from the outside. They're going to figure out what the easiest path in a hacker might take that path, depending on the scope. Scope's very important with the pen test, mind you. And then they're going to eventually, once they breach your network, or if they don't, put together a really comprehensive report and walk you through everything that they came across, things that you could do better, help you secure those issues. And the really good pen testing firms even hold your hand after and work with your engineers to make sure that those things are fixed. Then they do a retest. So that's like your typical pen test. There's little nuance to that between white box, black box, all those fun things. One being like if you're going to be inside the network or how much knowledge you have about the test ahead of time.
Yes. Could you go into white box, black box then a little more?
Sure. So white box testing is you're going to have a lot of knowledge of what's going on. Generally, even with a white box test, you're going to be sent like a device or a virtual machine that you're going to put on your network to give that attacker the same kind of level of access of one of your employees. And then you're going to see from maybe an insider threat perspective what an employee could do if they were just sitting on the network with very limited access, what they can access, how they can pivot. If you have basic vulnerabilities that would allow them to even escalate all the way up to domain administrator, which is like in a Windows environment, one of the highest levels that you can get up there. So that's a white box. A black box is like very limited knowledge of the attack surface. So you might give them perhaps, this is our company name, and then during the enumeration phase, they'll look for more information and then confirm with you like, hey, is this your address or not, before actually then going to attack. Because with a black box, there's a lot of issues if somebody accidentally scans the wrong network and ends up getting in to somebody else's stuff, which unfortunately has happened a few times in our industry. So a black box is pretty much very limited knowledge. They don't know a lot about your company. They're going to attack it more like an attacker, but there's still going to be a scope. So the scope might say like, hey, phishing's okay, but only for these users, or phishing's not okay. Or you can scan our network, but only from the hours of 5 p.m. to midnight, because we don't want to interfere with production. So the scope is very important in a test. And what you can expect generally with these kind of industry tests are you're going to get a good high level of where your vulnerabilities are, what an attacker would use if they were targeting you specifically to try and get in, if there's any low-hanging fruit, things that could easily be found by somebody with very limited skills or knowledge, and how you can fix those issues.
Okay, so that kind of sounds to me like a black box would just be paying hackers to perform hacker voodoo, whereas a white box assessment would be what somebody would want to pay for if they really wanted to effectively find more vulnerabilities per dollar.
Yeah, for dollar, I think white box testing tends to give you more for your money. When white box testing is done right, and it's not always done right, mind you. A lot of companies sell what they claim to be white box tests that are actually just vulnerability assessments, and those are no bueno. But when done right, you get more bang for your buck that way because they're not spending a lot of time trying to figure out what your stuff is, where it is. You're just telling them this is where my stuff is, and then go and attack it, do your thing. Whereas if you follow like the pen test execution standard, which you can go look at online if you Google pen test execution standard, there's a whole series of steps that an attacker will take during a pen test in general. And if you're doing white box, you kind of get to skip a lot of those steps because that information is provided to you by the client, which cuts down on the overall cost, but at the same time also makes it easier for everybody involved who's doing the testing because they don't have to go find your stuff through open source intelligence gathering tools. Same kind of tool somebody like Karen Klein is pretty familiar with in terms of looking and figuring out what a network's topology is, where their infrastructure is, trying to figure out whose emails are at that company and all that kind of stuff. That's already kind of given to you. So you skip that step and it saves you a bit of money. You get more bang for your buck generally. But it really also depends on who the company is and what their attack surface is and what they are trying to protect. Because sometimes a black box assessment will find stuff that a white box won't. Like, for instance, the dev sets something up in AWS and forgets about it and leaves a copy of your customer database there, which is something I've seen. So it really depends on your threat surface, right? And what you do as your company, because every company is a little different. But your average mom and pop shop or your small medium business, white box is generally the way to go.
Okay. So since this is supposed to be for people in crypto and blockchain, there's a lot of talk about these people begging daddy government for more regulation. So what I wanted to talk about was voluntary compliance in InfoSec and the type of compliance that and policy that might be written internally by a company. Have you or Adrian worked on that, Adrian?
I didn't quite understand the question.
The question was, have you worked on internal policy and compliance?
Very little.
Frank?
So I actually can add a little something on this. I just found out when we were talking to a group of actually lawyers that were crypto specialty. So they're saying that one of the things is when it's really important with all the AI that's coming out that anyone download anything to their device has to have in their terms and conditions. One of the things that they're going to be doing for compliance is to make sure that the user has to scroll twice and then click accept. That's the way that they're moving forward to just verify that these are humans.
Right.
I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah. You'd be amazed at how many projects literally don't even add the TNCs to their website or anywhere, much less the software. And most Web3 projects honestly don't have software downloads. The only reason we do is because we provide a client that allows you to interface with our network to be part of a distributed computing platform. However, though, to the compliance one, I also do have a bit of experience in that as well. I worked at BitPay, which is the most compliant cryptocurrency company and the oldest cryptocurrency company that's been in business since 2011. And they focus on payments and payment rails. And there's a lot of nuances going from money transfer licenses to a bit license from New York to, do you use Chainalysis to, trace transactions to, OFAC sanctioned entities. There's a lot that goes into it. So I guess what part of compliance are you mostly referring to?
What I'm referring to is the opposite of both of those. I was referring to voluntary compliance and voluntary policy that people would impose upon themselves as a measure of adhering to some type of standard or best practice, rather than having third-party bodies impose their will on the industry.
Different type of compliance. Yes.
Yeah.
So
someplace that you might see this would be with just having a memo go out around the company as far as novel phishing attempts and stuff like that. Frank, have you worked in policy?
Yeah, I've done some GRC stuff. So GRC, governmental regulatory and compliance work.
Nope, wrong stuff. Drop the G, something else.
I know. So you're talking about specifically was like voluntary compliance. So
yeah. So for example, like the entire existence of the TPN, the Trusted Partner Network.
Right. You and I have discussed that a little bit. Why don't you expand on that, Nathan?
Well, because I'm supposed to be asking the question, so I can't really do that. That would be doing this all wrong.
Sure. So I'll do my best to reiterate what we've previously discussed there. Trusted Partner Network is a project Nathan's looking into putting together where...
No. I'm talking about the existing one in Hollywood.
Oh, that one. That's different. I can't talk to that. I don't know much about it.
Okay, I'll talk about it very, very high level real quick. Just get it out there because it's the idea behind it that is very, very important. And the idea is that you have all of Hollywood and they all spend a whole lot of money creating digital assets. Entertainment, right? And entertainment is the United States' second biggest export after war. So it's very, very important part of our GDP. So basically, the Trusted Partner Network is a way to assess risk to assure that nobody is getting hacked. HBO has a whole lot of interest in legacy not getting their stuff shown, along with Warner Brothers and all these unrelated studios. They all need to watch each other's backs, right? So they all work together. And while there is no governmental compliance and while there is no governmental policy over this stuff, they're very hard on themselves to assure that that's never a necessity or anything like that, and that they're all protecting one another. And it doesn't become an attractive means of black hats extorting.
So do you think it actually works? Because I feel like everything would be standardized, and if you get it into one, then you have everything. Or
right. No, so it's not about standardization. It's about a competing body of best practices, right? So would standardization happen? Well, yeah, unless, something leaked. So I worked with a company that worked with on the Star Wars movies, which at the time were the biggest digital assets, the most valuable digital assets in existence, right? Mm-hmm. And nothing leaked that wasn't supposed to. And that is a very, very, very serious undertaking. Even dealing with the line of sight cannons when they're doing off-site shoots, right? Well, how's all that stuff going to get pipelined back to the production studio? So, and how are we going to protect that? They always have to come up with new methodologies for custodying these assets. So in crypto and blockchain, we're very arrogant, believing that, we have this really unique need to protect a digital asset when the need has been around in other industries for a very, very long time.
Yes, it has.
So from my understanding, the TPN members are mainly concerned with their commitment to protecting intellectual property, fighting piracy, enhancing their reputation, credibility is the gist of it, right?
So basically we need a TPN for blockchain. Kind of like a DAO, but we need a one DAO, a main DAO that will
it would not be a DAO. Well, the thing is do we need something like this? We very much do. And the reason that we do is because if not, then we're going to fall victim to regulation and compliance. Regulation and compliance just add in a whole bunch of unnecessary cost and labor that keeps actual security from happening. And then when you can do this in a voluntary fashion and you protect it because of a holistic approach to security rather than a reaction to some government demand, then you're actually protecting the assets and you're actually growing and bettering the entire ecosystem, the entire sector.
I'm following you now. I remember at BitPay, I think when the travel rule, are you familiar with the travel rule at all?
I'm still having audio issues. You can hear me. I'm having a really hard time hearing you. So just go ahead with it.
All right. No. I just the travel. I guess the travel rule at one point was $10,000 or technically $9,999 that you could move throughout. So I guess BitPay had a voluntary compliance policy where we said hey, we'll comply at say $1,000, and we'll anticipate that the laws are moving in these directions. I know that's not exactly what you're talking about, but it does seem a little bit proactive in a sense versus reactive to the laws. is there a parallel there?
Oh yes, that's 100% what I hope to achieve.
Excellent. So what's the motivation though? Where do the companies that don't even have a CISO source that from without getting gouged by a web, I guess not Web 2, but a traditional cybersecurity company?
Well, so there's a whole lot of different ways it can work. We've been discussing. This is really going off the rails here, but we've been discussing and really like looking at cause and effect. What happens when you have a traditional security consultancy do a whole lot of work versus when you have like a well-scoped bounty that sits out there because you believe there's a bug sitting somewhere that needs to be dealt with, right? So is it going to get fixed? Is the incentive there? Or is the incentive better that someone knows, oh, okay, well, this is a possible attack surface. Let's hop on it and then, fuck that $5,000 bounty. We could do, $1.5 million wallet drain instead, right? So it's an idea of like incentives versus, an unsophisticated attacker might not have access to expensive tools, right? So I don't know. We're still kicking around ideas and about cause and effect and everything like that, and what this thing could potentially look like. But step one is educating people. So today we go through vocabulary.
Vocabulary is good. And we have got Adrian here to help us with that as well. Adrian knows quite a bit of that vocabulary. Right, Adrian?
My vocabulary mostly consists of 4-letter words.
How about we do something like threat detection?
Sure. Threat detection. That's a pretty big window, but we can break that down. So like threat detection, overall detecting threats. There's a lot that goes into it. You have, I don't know, like data collection, analysis, threat identification, alerting, response, all these kind of things. You got signature-based detections, anomaly-based detections, behavior-based detections, machine learning-based detections, and like human-based detections. So it's pretty much a pretty important component to most company security posture. It's going to help you like identify, respond to threats in real time, reduce like the possibility of a data breach, or protect against financial loss or reputational damage. Improve incident response. That's another word we should talk about. And containment, another important word. And enhance overall security and compliance. Compliance being that driving factor for a lot of these companies where they mainly only care about security because they have to. It's about checking a box for them, not about actually securing their assets, not about actually keeping things safe. It's more about appearance. And that's one of the faults I think there is with a lot of these frameworks that are out there. You go like NIST, they put out all these different frameworks for helping companies understand and comply voluntarily. Like the cybersecurity frameworks are a really good one. A lot of that's based on NIST 800, 600. It's compliance stuff that is pretty much checklists. Like if you're gonna be running a company that's gonna be using a lot of computers and doing networking and all these things, these are the things you should at a minimum do to keep yourself safe. And that's a compliance framework, which is different than a regulatory framework, mind you, which is SOC 2, SOC 1. Those are more of a regulatory kind of framework for risk for like insurance companies. If they're going to insure a company, they want to make sure they're SOC compliant. And that's usually a voluntary thing that a company will do, and then have like an auditor come in. And that auditor is usually an accountant as opposed to like a hacker. And they're gonna pretty much be like, yeah, you paid for a firewall license, check. You set up an IDS, check. And they don't actually then go into nitty gritty if those things are actually on, working, or doing what they're supposed to do. It's about checking boxes. But I digress. I've probably gone a little bit too much into your question there. So threat detection.
I do think it depends. Oh, yeah. I was going to say, I do think it depends a little bit on the entity, because even when we did our SOC compliance at my past company, like they literally drilled into like which consumer data we were collecting from which country, and what the process of approval was like for, putting out any public content. So it was pretty thorough, but is that actually what matters? Like, I don't think so personally, but
yeah. So I mean, it's usually a third-party audit, So like auditor is going to come in, review your policies, your procedures and controls to make sure they meet the standards. But the issue I have with the SOC-based compliance is that you get to pick what you're going to be audited on. They don't audit everything. And you still get a SOC 2 compliance certificate, even if you didn't audit everything that another company might audit who gets the same thing. So it's not the best out of all the potential audits that are out there, in my opinion. But I do tend to shit on things. Nathan, Andrew, why don't you guys talk for a bit?
Well, I'm really happy that you said two things, that you brought up audit in the correct term, like the correct use of the word, right? So that was really, really important. And I'd like you to touch on that a little bit more. But the other thing that you had mentioned was in real time when you were talking about threat detection, because that's a lot of things that happen with the misuse of the word audit. Is people think that they go out and they spend 50 to 250K and that this is somehow a rubber stamp that makes things okay and that, you know, everything's fine to run and there's no need for an ongoing engagement, right? So I think you achieved two really good things with your explanation there. But go a little further into the audit, like how does the audit get created, if you can do that, or who administers the audit? Scheduling, are these reoccurring things, you know, stuff like that?
Sure. So like I think Andrew can talk to some of this as well since he's been through a SOC audit recently, right? So let me have Andrew kind of start and I'll jump in.
Yeah, I think to your point, yeah, audit's a very interesting word. It was definitely derived in the, you know, financial space, which was simply making sure that the balances of accounts added up and, you know, checked out and, you know, they didn't detect any shell companies, you know, embezzling billions of dollars. Like that never happens. But anyway, beyond that, I would say that in the sense of an audit, there's in the SOC audit, it was totally just kind of suits, as you mentioned. They came in from New York. They came in, they sat around a conference table, they drilled through every single director's files and logs, and, you know, how I was collecting emails. Was I being compliant with GDPR and all this stuff? Were we storing, you know, our payment credentials from like the PCI compliance standpoint in the right place? But it did not seem to me that they did, and they just required us to have like an antivirus software. You know, it didn't just define what it could literally be the most consumer retail one ever, which is what we had actually. So I don't believe it. To your point, I don't believe that the word audit is the correct word to be talking to when it comes down to security and cybersecurity, the realm we're in now.
Well said. Back to you. And jumping in there, I mean, there's different types of audits, right? You got financial audits, looking over the books; operational audits, looking over operations and processes in a company; compliance audits, looking at, you know, that a company is complying with all the relevant laws and regulations and standards; and then IT audits, right? IT audits are supposed to focus on organizations' IT systems and their infrastructure. And last but not least, we have these Web3 audits, which are supposed to be very important for a Web3 company and determine like how they're handling sensitive data like cryptocurrency or a blockchain-based platform. Auditors that are coming are supposed to help ensure that they're complying with relevant regulations like GDPR, HIPAA, PCI DSS. I'm sure you guys, when you worked for, I think you said BitPay, certainly had to be PCI compliant, right?
Yep. Yeah.
And somebody who has done PCI compliance audits, I said there's certainly stuff they could do better in those. Like one of the top things I used to do with a company I worked for was network segmentation with PCI audits. Just making sure that this network can't talk to that network, that the guest Wi-Fi can't talk to the server network. The server network can't talk to the network where everybody's desktop is on, things like that. But there is a lot more, obviously, that goes into true PCI compliance. And that's just one type.
Yeah, I was actually going to chime in with a story there. BitPay, we had $1.5 million stolen from us that the insurance companies would not reimburse us for because we could not prove that we had just done exactly what you said. Like, was the CFO who had the signing key quarantined like a specific subnet and device, or sorry, you know, that's not the proper terminology, but was he literally quarantined where you could track every action that he was taking or not? And they said at the end of the day, they couldn't validate that he was, in fact, not the person who took the money and stole it, because the CEO sent him a message while on a flight saying, hey, I need you to send me $1.5 million to this address. So anyway, we had a pretty prominent lawsuit about that, but it could have easily been cleaned up if there was a better trail. And I'm fearful to use the word audit now because I'm trying to see which direction it goes into, but that was just one story.
That was a great story. Thank you for sharing. Anybody else have anything they want to share about auditing or compliance?
I'm good.
As far as auditing is concerned, in the coming weeks, we're going to be doing an entire episode on it. So I don't think there's no need to really go into the weeds any further with that. But I do want to touch back on something else that we're going to be doing an entire episode on that I think we would do well to address now a little bit. And that would be incident response, because that's a fun one. One of the things that makes incident response really unique in the crypto and blockchain space is, how do you do incident response with miners on a distributed network that are all across the world in different time zones? That question doesn't really have an answer, but could you talk about some companies have what internal incident response policy might look like, and then the reaction after an incident, the actual response?
Okay, so I was actually a security operations. I worked as a security operations center analyst at Kaseya, so I could probably start off this one.
Go ahead.
So basically, we're monitoring your network. We're watching people who are traveling for business, log in from different IPs that we don't know, and we're calling. And then if it's something that's totally suspicious at that point, we're gonna just call them. Usually, companies, when we're managing and we're monitoring their networks, they have someone in their own operations center that we can just call and say, "Hey, look, is this someone here, or are you guys running any tests?" Usually it's them testing on themselves that we get the alerts for. So usually, we just kind of reach out directly to them. And if not, we just shut down their systems. We could shut down individual devices or just shut down the whole network.
That actually is interesting. That's actually kind of so to the point of crypto, though, that's actually impossible, right? Like as you were mentioning, kind of time zones and whatnot. Like, it does work in the traditional space, and now I understand Kaseya. However, in the blockchain space, you don't even know how to get in touch with somebody who's started half of these projects. I mean, you've got people that are anonymous; they don't give their name; they're pseudonymous. You've never heard of them. Like, there's nobody 24/7 watching around the clock. It's much more of a reactive space.
Yeah, but the blockchain itself prevents so many of the vulnerabilities that you would see.
But if you know that your private keys for signing transactions are going to be likely stored on some network, that network becomes a massive, attack venue. And notably in bridges, for instance, if you guys look up the amount of money, I don't have the facts in front of me. I wish I had a Joe Rogan assistant to look it up, but there have been billions and billions of dollars that have been drained out of bridges because no one's actually being proactive. They're just literally waiting for the bridge to get hacked, and then they're going to fix the loophole. And I know some projects now are paying, 7-figure bounties for exploits, but that's still, I don't know if that's enough.
I thought we were just talking about
a valid point. Cosmos, Polkadot, Ripple, Binance, Ethereum, all of them. The bridges are important, and all these different protocols, these cross-bridge things that kind of let different blockchain networks talk to one another is a ripe space for abuse.
Social engineering is a huge issue because nobody knows who anybody is. I've worked for the last 5 years with people that I don't know one of them personally, and I don't even know their real names or where they live, and I don't ask. So if you imagine that level, combine that with a savvy social engineering candidate that is able to manipulate you and think it's your boss, et cetera, et cetera. It's so easy on Telegram, for instance. It just makes the industry so unique, and I think there has to be a whole new set of kind of standards or way that we're going to do things. But with the anonymity layer, it's very challenging. What do you guys think about that?
That's a very valid point. I mean, Web3 organizations are decentralized by nature. That means the incident response plans also got to be decentralized. Makes it a lot more complex to build an IR plan strategy that's going to involve all these different stakeholders and parties. And when it comes to like blockchain specific threats, Web3 orgs are vulnerable to things like 51% attacks, reorg attacks, all these different smart contract vulnerabilities. And like IR has to take all these into account and include like specific measures to mitigate them. And not every company is necessarily going to do a good job. And sometimes just having one weak link in a chain, if you have these cross-bridge protocols, can, really screw over other related networks and, token related risks, even handling cryptocurrencies and tokens, which are like really valuable, vulnerable to theft and loss. And also a lot of the times very hard to trace once they've been stolen. IR has got to include a lot of stuff to protect these things proactively, not just reactively. And you had mentioned proactive versus reactive before, and that's a really good distinction, because when it comes to incident response in InfoSec, there are two types. There's proactive incident response, where you have a SOC, like Karen had mentioned, and that SOC will call you and let you know, hey, something funny's going on. Make sure that's good. And then you have reactive, which is more in the digital forensics and incident response, where it's after the fact, figuring out how a hack happened, what happened to cause it, what could have been done better. It's cleanup. And those people who are really good at that make a lot of money, because it's a very specialized skill set. It requires use and knowledge of specific tools like autopsy and knowing how to handle sensitive data properly where it could be admissible in a court case. So a lot that goes into all these different things. And not everybody in InfoSec even knows about all the different kind of like sub jobs that different people within our space have. Some people specialize very much in what they do, and they don't really care what other people in the industry do. If people are very good at configuring firewalls, and that all they do is configure firewalls, and then other people who are very good at recording InfoSec conferences and getting that knowledge out there, like our friend Adrian here, who hasn't talked much and should talk more. And so like there's a lot of different stuff you can specialize in our industry. But going back to incident response in general with Web3, there's I think not really much in terms of a compliance framework that's out there that's geared directly towards them. You can definitely pick and choose from different compliance frameworks to make yourself more secure overall, like
but you can't really framework. That's the challenge. Is a lot of these companies, again, they are for instance, the DAOs, right? And and the reason that we've been so successful in the West, and especially in the progression of civilization, is because we have had levels of hierarchy and decision makers, and DAOs basically create redundant work for people. So the only way to overcome that, in my mind, is to actually have a committee of a group of people dedicated to the project who focus on that. And they do proactively preempt this. They do have weekly meetings, and they do work with the right technology providers, because you're never going to get the masses of the entire, say, 500 person DAO to all vote yes on we should spend $200,000 a year on cybersecurity. It just doesn't happen, right? So that's why we.
So for some of our listeners who might not know what a DAO is, can you expand a little bit more on what a decentralized autonomous organization is, how it differs from, say, a traditional organization?
Yeah, I would say it differs in a sense of you're performing a function that's needed by a project with no formal job title, affiliation with the company, official on the books record. So it's almost like you're just helping be part of a community. And it's funny because I don't really believe we're truly to the actual realization of what a DAO is. I mean, first of all, they are decentralized, but many DAOs have 3 VCs that make up 70% of the voting rights. So many are not decentralized, right? And then autonomous, I would definitely say they're not autonomous as it is now, because we have to have multiple committees for instance, you can't have every DAO member voting on every single transaction to spend $20 for a subscription to a social media monitoring platform. So there's a long way to go in the autonomous sense. Like, it doesn't just run itself, right? And in terms of organizations, luckily the legal framework has opened up, and states like Wyoming are very friendly with DAOs now, as well as again the Cayman Islands BVI model as well. So, in a nutshell, DAOs are it's a community that you join, and there's two types of people. There's core contributors who were there from the beginning and they're mostly full time, and then there's just going to be contributors, which could be anybody that could put up a proposal that is a member of the DAO, and it ends up being a self-governed community. However, the problem with that is if you have 10 people working on the same initiative at the same time in a different way, you end up doing 10x the work, and it becomes very inefficient, and it really lacks the decision-making time takes way too long. So that's that's my perspective on the DAOs, and hopefully you get that.
Yeah, I haven't really been all up to speed on DAOs like a lot of people. Some people have talked to me about them, and from my understanding, structure-wise, if you were to compare them to like different ways that a regular organization runs, decision-making is a bit different. They offer decentralized decision-making, which is like more diverse and can lead to more innovative ideas, and they're going to operate autonomously. So that can also lead to faster and efficient things happening, but at the same time,
can you imagine trying to get a platform in place to protect you from like a known vulnerability, and it taking you 2 weeks to get the DAO vote approved? Like, things like that just are not. That's insane, right?
I mean, imagine you had a 0 day on your network. You needed to be patched right away, and you now need to have a vote go up before it can be fixed. I think there needs to be a certain degree, a balance between autonomy and certain people being allowed to do certain actions if something like that would work. But as somebody who's not really involved in DAOs or that whole ecosystem, I do have a lot of questions on how that works. Like, do you have a security guy who you can just defer decision making to for certain things, or does everybody need to vote on everything? Is it like a difference between a representative democracy versus like a true democracy where you have elected officials who can make decisions on behalf of people? A lot of questions in that space.
Yeah, we should probably do
that's really absolutely. Because there's the structure that's going to have to go into place to make sure that people, that things can still get done immediately. We want incident response to be not delayed. So how are we going to make kind of a trusted system where there's always going to be it's similar to kind of what do you think about like what we have now, where we have people that, I mean, I know obviously this didn't do us so well, but for in case of emergencies, we do need people that we could already have voted in that are our trusted ones to make decisions. There's got to be that still.
Yeah.
We're going to be covering that on an upcoming show. We actually have a guy who does virtual CISO stuff, and we've been talking about how to productize something like that.
Wait, like a fractional CISO? Like someone who will just do it for multiple projects at the same time? Or was that
yes.
That? Nice. Yeah, that's what's needed, and that combined with a level of like a council, because nobody's going to put that in totally just one person's hands, but if he was like half of it, the council, and then there was at least like a delegate. And the good thing about DAOs is it's not delegates like in the US, right? Like you have a full vote and you choose who you can delegate it to. So you're not bound by the constraints of like your state or your, wherever you live. So,
right. Anyway, in crypto and blockchain, we hate the word authority, but like in this case, it would be a trusted third party that you're deferring to, because of their knowledge, insights, and expertise, and then B, to streamline the process.
Yep. And just to be clear, we do, that definitely does exist, and we do bring, most of my DAOs will pay $10,000 a month for qualified advisors, such as, someone who could actually be that person. and then they're not a full-time contributor. They're just a contributor maybe for like a bi-weekly, or weekly security council meeting, right? And then they may need to be available like on demand in this specific case. So the advisories is a huge part of that.
The product that we're looking at is kind of like similar to traditional models where it would be giving like, what's the current state of the security posture of our project to like during a quarterly token holders meeting or something like that. And directives, what should we want to accomplish,
Exactly.
But
look
again,
at the
that's going to be a full episode coming up.
I was going to say, look at the latest Uniswap commitment. Like they literally said Uniswap v4 will be the most secure Web3 platform that will have ever existed. And that's a very bold statement because I feel like if I was a hacker, I'd be like, oh, I'm going in after these guys. Because that just sounds like a challenge. So check out what they say about audits, and I think you'll be fascinated.
Yeah, so we actually do have a few questions from the chat on YouTube here. Actually, they're just more statements than questions. But if you are in that chat, feel free to actually ask a question, and we can see it here and answer. Ryan actually put DAO as an entity with no central control where members may vote on different initiatives, usually weighted by the amount of tokens they hold. Yes, that is very true. And I actually only learned that about 2 months ago. Talk about being out of the loop.
Well, yeah, that's a model that people have seen through for a long time. We call those the VC DAOs. Like a proof of work DAO would be much more, sustainable. Because if 2/3 of the DAO is controlled by two venture capitalists who have a relationship, then it's not really a DAO. It's a VC organization.
That actually is a really good point because if you think about it like today, right, our vote doesn't really mean too much, but if we were in a DAO where, like, let's say I have just a regular, I'm not a lot to show for myself, but I'm still part of because you could have like a community that had their combined amount of tokens that they have. You know what I mean? So you could actually give like purpose. You can actually have a vote, even if you have less. If you have a community of voters, that can go up against the big guys and the who are running the DAOs. Sorry, I lost my voice at consensus, so it's a little hard to chime in here.
Yeah, the original idea of a DAO was that the organization itself was autonomous with little to zero human involvement whatsoever. But that was back in 2016. Yeah. So every couple of years, the definition changes and people just kind of get blinded by what's right in front of them.
Yeah, that's my observation. There isn't, in my opinion, there's no such thing as a true DAO, just so you know.
Agreed.
So, carry on.
Wow. So Adrian kind of hopped off. He decided to step back for a bit. Hopefully he'll join us again next week. But Adrian, great friend to us all, may or may not be back. Regardless, we'll still be broadcasting on his channel each week. And Nathan, passing it back to you, I think you wanted to talk about some other InfoSec-related terms that could relate to the Web3 community.
I think I'm pretty much done with the Web3 community. I'm very passionate about the expansion of freedom, and I just don't really see it happening in Web3, especially just trying to push half-baked, vulnerable games to market. It's tough. It's tough.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think these companies are ever going to give us, like, for instance, Karen, and you can talk more about this, Karen, about like having, a digital identity that's, totally yours. You control your information, and you have to sign a transaction to release your health records to a hospital or release your credit score or part of it to a merchant. But will Google, Apple, Facebook, will those guys ever relinquish control of our data? Like, I find that very far-fetched to believe that we'll ever control our own data, and, well, I wouldn't say ever, but in the next, foreseeable future, right? Because it's just such a big revenue stream.
I mean, I agree. The first thing pirates need is, good means of communication. And so we're the pirates and we don't have very good communication yet. And after that, we have to get our ducks in a row. But it's going to take a little while. There has to be a substantial amount of chit-chatting mesh networks before there can be an actual digital revolution. But I think that's putting the cart before the horse. I agree with this statement, though.
Speaking of mesh networks, I came across Meshtastic like a few months ago, and that thing is really neat, project-wise. It uses like these LoRa radios that you can buy fairly cheap on Amazon, on like, you can buy them on eBay. It doesn't matter. You can get them everywhere, really. And these things, once you flash that Meshtastic firmware to them, you just Bluetooth it to your phone, and then you essentially anybody else who's got one, who you've ever interacted with, and like they scan your QR code and you join the same network together. And if you're like within a mile of each other, you can message each other, and the more people who join these networks, the more it can become resilient, because as opposed to like traditional networking where you add more people to like a Wi-Fi network, the signal strength degrades and it's harder to get your signal out. These work the opposite, where the more people who are on it, the better your message can get relayed through multiple nodes and the more resilient the network gets. And they even have these really cool plugins for like ATAC, so you can put on a map like where somebody is visually, and you can say you're at like a conference or even you're at a protest and you don't want somebody knowing what you're messaging your friends or your conference goers or fellow protesters. You can send an encrypted message to somebody that never goes over the internet. It's all over radio, and it's all over a network of devices that can relay those messages without necessarily being able to read them themselves, which is kind of freaking cool, in my opinion.
It is, until you see Helium and what they did with it. So if you're not familiar with Helium, they did that exact same model. However, they collected insane amounts of data from everybody and everybody's phone based on their network, even though it was P2P, which literally caused havoc. And we should probably have a whole episode on DPEN, right? Decentralized physical infrastructure, because that actually really leads into the next point of saying, hey, if we really want to be decentralized, we can't all be using AWS and Azure servers. We have to have our own fiber, our own infrastructure, our own routing protocols and whatnot to create a true decentralized ISP. And I know some people working on this, but the mesh network idea is great.
When it comes to that, I've seen some projects in that space like IPFS and Internet Computer. You can host your files in a decentralized way.
ICP, yeah. But think about it. Does it make sense to host a 10 gigabyte file on 100,000 nodes? Like that, the amount of space and efficiency is insane. So
I agree. But like BitTorrent rather is a pretty cool decentralized. No, not really decentralized, but there are definitely central points in there. But it's a cool way to like share files with other people. In my opinion, it's mostly used for piracy, honestly. But you could also just easily share a Linux ISO that way, and downloading that one file from like 1,000 sources tends to be so much quicker than from one source. And like, I've been able to pull down terabytes of stuff so much quicker than if I just had like it hosted on AWS and I tried to pull it down, through one long file transfer, and that would just take forever. Whereas this, it's like as fast as my internet connection can get it, and as fast as it can write it to disk, I get that. And I think that's really cool use of like a decentralized technology. Now, honestly, you could say like the older protocols like Nutella and like what Napster ran on, which was I think called something else. I don't remember now. But like those were more decentralized because you didn't necessarily have the central points of failure that you have with BitTorrent, but it is still a good step in the right direction. And there are ways you can kind of like safely and anonymously share files with Wormhole and other things out there. But there's definitely a lot more that needs to be done in that space from a privacy perspective. And Helium, great point. I mean, also ran on LoRa, but was a privacy disaster, and also was mainly problematic because of the way they decided to incentivize people for running their nodes and paying them in their cryptocurrency, which they got less and less of as more people came into the area where they were in. So it's like, so you're going to de-incentivize people to put more of your stuff there. Okay. But yeah, it was a good start. As far as a project goes, I think it was an interesting attempt. It just kind of, like most projects that I've seen in this space, tend to fall apart over time.
Yeah, Karen, why don't you talk about Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to take over the conversation, but Karen's been really passionate about this project called WorldCoin, or not passionate about WorldCoin, but the idea that
knowing how they failed.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Are you familiar with that?
WorldCoin. I think Karen's actually spoke to me a little bit about it, but I don't want to guess, so I'll let her explain it.
They were kind of trying to just be the token for everybody, trying to say, okay, well, we want. So their strategy was to make a world ID, which is terrifying. That's why it failed. No, but really, what they were trying to do is just be able to give access, to the blockchain to everybody, and their solution for that was doing, for working with the digital identity and making it a kind of a global passport. But where they failed is that they were trying to do too much, too fast. They didn't have the scalability, and so they sacrificed, like everybody does, and they're trying to get tech out too fast. They sacrificed security for access and ease, and a more centralized, network. So basically, they were building a nation state. They were doing the opposite of what the token was supposed to do.
Yeah, that is pretty interesting, actually. And I think a lot of these projects really start out with the best of intentions, but start making one concession, and then after that, they have to make another one. And before you know it, the entire scope of the project has devolved, and we see stuff just fall apart.
Like when you think of it on a large scale, even back in history, even before all this, I mean, every time there is a national crisis, we need results fast. So we'll put out something, even though it's not fully ready. Like in COVID, we all of a sudden got everybody to do the contactless payments, and we got everybody to do all these things that made their lives more convenient, and that helped in the emergency situation. But they weren't long-term solutions. So a lot of the tech that we have right now, these were the short-term solutions that were never meant to be long-term. They were supposed to be good enough.
If you've ever worked in InfoSec, the old axiom kind of holds true. There's nothing more permanent than a temporary solution that works well. I mean, I see all the time.
Yeah, and that's true, because I was thinking the ones
change it tends to be what happens, and it's pretty sad, right? A lot of these projects, they put in place these temporary solutions, or they make a concession, but before you know it, that just becomes the norm and the standard, and the drive to improve and like make shit better just falls to the wayside.
Exactly, until another technology, because I think look what we're seeing right now. Everybody has these really great projects, but nobody has put them together in the right way for the right reason yet.
Right, and I think a lot of companies want to jump on that it's Web3 bandwagon, so they'll find a way to incorporate a blockchain technology into a project that would be better served just by using a traditional database. Like, as cool as a distributed ledger is, to be able to store your information and have it redundantly written in an immutable way to multiple other copies of a database, sometimes a good old SQL database is what you need to do what you want. Sometimes having a standard API endpoint is just fine, and you don't need to do your API communication over the blockchain for some reason. I've seen a lot of really odd use cases for Web3 and blockchain technology that I just think, why? Like, I thought the initial use case for NFTs was pretty cool. If somebody was, non-fungible token, For those of you who are not initiated in that space, most of us hear that and we think of idiots buying JPEGs for millions of dollars and then watching the price of them drop to be next to nothing over time. But the initial use case was going to be that was your receipt when you bought a piece of art to prove that the piece of art that you had was legitimately that piece of art. It was,
And I think we're going to end up transitioning kind of back into that original purpose of it as we see blockchain being more used on a wider level on our economy, because it will happen. And the whole NFT will be more of like for real estate, it's I don't care if it's a picture of your house, picture of what, but that is still your proof of purchase.
Yeah, but I mean, just like with pictures and the stupidity associated with that with NFTs, and
meme coins.
Meme coins. That's another freaking whole nother topic. Like there are people selling virtual real estate in virtual worlds that are built on blockchain technology, which are like, oh, you can buy the deed to the business that you live in, but in the virtual world, it's so dumb. But people are making so much money on it. Like this dude came out to Vegas and rented out a whole hotel, and I actually got to go to that shit. And I got a picture with the guy just for shits and giggles. But I mean, the whole company is dedicated to selling virtual real estate that doesn't exist in the real world to people who are willing to buy it, and that's only going to be around as long as that infrastructure is up. It's not like a tangible thing that you can hold in your hand. You're spending money on like a place in the game. It's really odd.
But that wasn't Upland, was it? The app.
It very much was Upland, and I got a picture with the freaking guy behind Upland. I literally went up to him like, "I'm such a big fan of you and what you do. Mind if I take a selfie with you?" And of course, he took a selfie with me. But but I got into that for free by kind of just knowing where to stand and what
I remember Earth2.io. Earth2.io.
It's like fucking Second Life. It's like, what the hell are we doing? You remember? Oh, you go all the way back to Traveler.io, like early days of the internet. That's what people thought it was going to be. Like walking around with virtual avatars in like a virtual reality environment, but on a computer screen. And now, even like the meaning of what a metaverse was supposed to be has changed and is completely corrupted thanks to Facebook. But like, there's so many cool projects that could have been and can still be, but I think have really taken some serious hits due to people who are just wanting to make money quickly and not actually build anything that would be there for a while.
Yeah. But could you picture, so how they're doing the buying the real estate, right? What if that was real estate? It could still be bought and sold. It could be done the same way.
Yeah, very true.
Yeah, that's the whole RWA.
That's my point.
And that's a whole other episode as well. Real world
Absolutely.
That's where we're looking at next. That's what we need to solve. That's what we need to protect, and that's the kind of stuff that we need to talk about to make sure that we're anticipating the vulnerabilities that will come when this happens.
Yeah. I mean, the key to the future is again, the biggest problem with the situation we're in now is that we're literally declining in population, where our debt is growing, and we can't contribute. If you think about GDP, it's per capita. So per capita is going down, our debt's going up. How can we sustain? That's why all the investment is going into AI, artificial intelligence, and tech to overcome this gap. So projects like this are the only way that the majority of people cannot actually own an asset. The only asset that somebody in the middle of nowhere with no access to anything but a phone can buy is part of a Bitcoin or part of a crypto asset.
Yeah, soon all you're going to need is your face.
Exactly. So
anyway, and Ryan, I'm just going to say Ryan because I can't pronounce the rest of that there. Wrote in YouTube that WorldCoin was funded by OpenAI's Sam Altman in 2019 and is funded by Andreessen Horowitz.
Yeah,
it's still going, and supposedly they'll be releasing a network later this year.
Yeah.
Hey, good luck to them.
While they scam billions of poor African people in exchange for like a few dollars to provide their facial identity for life, but I don't.
Yeah, that's not the way. Because they did not. WorldCoin did not move to a decentralized facial digital identity, so they are not good. It will not
Who was
work.
the one who was requiring you to scan your iris in order to get?
Yeah,
that was them. That was them.
Yeah, it's pretty freaking scammy to me.
Yeah, they're gonna fail 100%.
So many companies also, just on a side note, rely on biometrics as if it's a really good factor, and like any factor that you can't revoke is just retarded, in my opinion. I shouldn't use that word anymore. I forgot. Anyway, like any kind of technology where you're doing a multi-factor, it's something you have, something you hold, like something you know. You need 3 of those, at least 2 out of the 3. And if one of your factors is like your fingerprint or your iris scan, that can be replicated. And like even if you have good hardware, hackers have found ways to do everything low tech, from like cloning your fingerprint with a piece of tape to like all this kind of stupid shit where we spend all this money to build these systems on biometrics that can easily be bypassed. And also, as soon as your biometrics are leaked, which they probably already have been if you put them pretty much anywhere because of all the data leaks that are out there, that could just be replicated by a threat actor who could grab it just as easily as somebody goes on Dhash to look up your password. So, like, they need to come up with better ways to authenticate.
They did. I was just gonna. So I was talking to this one dude, Javi. He really he's doing what is it? I'll look up the name of the company, but they're doing face. They're doing like they're mapping your face, so it's it's not infrared. It's actually let me pull them up right now. So they're really.
Isn't that what they all do?
They're doing. No, they all use different types.
Yeah, the one I use is like most crypto exchanges where you see it's like a bunch of like lines, like 3D rendering of your face basically. But still, I don't trust any of that with all the deep fake stuff now. And imagine a 3D print.
It's at the end of the day, it's relying on a pipe in your computer that could be redirected. So somebody's doing Linux, right? Name type impersonation is huge. You can freaking name a pipe. Everything on Linux is a file. So if your authentication mechanism that is going to be relying on like checking some trusted hardware device is going to actually do what it says it does and mapping your face with like a really good camera, or scanning your fingerprint is going to work, or checking your iris, if that's eventually at the end of the day just going to be a file, somebody's going to find a way to impersonate and pass it along without, especially if the authentication and the verification is done on the host system and then just the verification is sent upstream.
What if it's built on the blockchain? What if it's built on the blockchain?
Okay, that's another thing. Like just throw blockchain at it. That'll fix the problem.
How's that?
No.
Yeah.
Well, because there's no centralized database to grab the data from.
Well, that's the problem. Is once your shit's out there, it's out there, right? Like,
but is that true? Is that true? If there's no centralized database, but does that not mean that every database has all the same information, or is the database just
storing the stuff in a decentralized database doesn't solve the problem of some hacker going and getting a copy of that data from some place where it's leaked and then using that as their, if I can log in with a picture of my face, or my face is my key, my voice is my key, right? You've seen deep fakes, right? Like, dude, I can put my face on freaking Arnold Schwarzenegger's body and be the Terminator if I want to. And like, if your only method of verifying somebody is who they say they are is a biometric or like a video call or a phone call, we've seen companies get hacked because they have some dude just do a little research and they look like, hey, look, the CFO of this company gave a talk on YouTube. Let me spend 10 minutes and clone his voice.
No, it wouldn't work.
10-second sample, and then they call up. Go ahead, Karen.
So check it out, right? So the way that the iPhone works, so I have to be a real human. I have to be giving off heat.
You're cutting out a bit there, but I think you said a real human would have to give off heat.
He's getting
no, we give off heat, so an infrared will pick us up. You know what I mean?
Right.
It would not. It wouldn't pick up any. It wouldn't register from a deep fake.
You can stick a T-shirt in a microwave or a dryer. You can make heat. You can always make heat.
I could 3D print your face right now and the symmetry would be perfect. And yeah, I just don't even
Or
believe it.
I could apply the heat signature of my real face and put a deep fake up for the camera that's looking at the data.
I
and
guess
just
technically
separate those
that
out
would
to two
work.
pipes. Yeah,
That
There's
would
a-
work.
it's a
Could
cat
be
and mouse
another
game.
combo.
Every time they come up with a better way to do it. And what I was saying, like companies have gotten hacked by people using deep fakes of and calling like their chief financial officer and being like, hey,
Exactly.
I'm on a plane. Send me, Andrew can talk to this one. But
Exactly what
Well,
happened to
let me
Goodmore.
ask you this. What would work? What combination of our technology could we put together that would work?
Agreed.
That's a great question.
I don't know.
And we could have a whole episode on that.
There's no perfect answer for that. I knew this guy. You had mentioned the healthcare records earlier. I met this guy who won some grant money from the VA office a long time ago, around 2016 maybe.
Mm-hmm.
And they were looking for a solution to say, okay, let's say we have a whacked out vet and he ends up in another city. Can he check himself into the VA and explain who he is with severe mental health issues? And the idea was the old something you have, something you are, something you know, right?
Yep.
And it's just like, well, how do you can't, there is no perfect security using those three things because they're all terribly flawed. Mental health issues, what you know might not be there, right?
Yeah.
Something you are, again, it could be taken from you, or you could just simply lose it by getting injured,
Or
losing
you
a
could sell
finger.
it.
I get it. Yeah, that's exactly what they're when we do figure out the way that's going to be the key to kind of integrating all of this technology that we have. You have to. I have no doubt in my mind that we are the group of people that can come up with that answer. Like we have to just think about. Oh, you're kind of doing it anyway.
You want to know why I
We
don't
can
want to
come up with a lot of answers.
Hang on.
Why, Nathan?
The reason I want to come up with that answer is because it keeps us in the ridiculous OPSEC overanalyzation, right? And it's my belief that it's this OPSEC overanalyzation that leads to the Dunning-Kruger approach to the rest of security that leaves us with all the issues of why we were going over all this vocabulary in the first place. Because everybody wants to know, like, what can they carve their keys into and what kind of tree is the best tree to bury their hidden treasure under and everything like that, rather than going like, well, how do we have our application properly assessed? A much more important question to ask.
Yeah, the overconfidence theory. Well, I mean, what is that? Is that what you were kind of describing, where you can ask two people how many grains of sand are there in the ocean, and nobody knows, but somebody will act like they know a lot more,
He's saying that question. The question he is asking is relevant to immediate use case. Like that's the question that we could use now.
So I think, and not to speak for you, Nathan, definitely clarify if I got this one wrong, is what you were getting at is, well, these are all great questions. Until we have a solid foundation to build these things on, we really can't answer them, because a lot of these projects are like sandcastles built right next to the ocean. And as long as we keep building on shaky infrastructure and not necessarily securing things from the ground up when they're built, you're just going to keep having these issues where we're, like the first thing is, can my app do what it's supposed to do securely before you get into how can I make sure I personally am not going to get hacked because one of my factors was exposed and, I didn't secure my MFA set up properly with Okta or something like that. I mean, those are all great questions, mind you. But if we keep building shit insecurely in the first place and relying on these audits from these companies that don't actually check everything, all they're doing is going through their list of this is okay and that's okay, therefore you get the stamp of approval, we're going to keep having blockchain projects get hacked. And a lot of the people who have the information security knowledge don't necessarily have the blockchain knowledge. And a lot of people who have the blockchain knowledge think they have the information security knowledge but don't. And then we have these gaps where you have Dunning-Kruger effect taking place, which is a great freaking term I love very much. But that pretty much is the insecure people who don't know what the hell they're talking about, talk very confidently and everybody follows and believes them. Where the people who do know what the hell they're talking about are very silent because they don't want to be wrong. They don't want to come out and look like an idiot or have that old axiom, better to be silent and thought a fool than to open my mouth and remove all doubt happen. So I could be wrong there, Nathan.
So maybe
If I
that's
am.
a project that we need to start. It sounds
Right,
like
exactly.
there's
That's what we're doing
That's
here
what we're
today.
doing.
That's exactly what we're doing.
One-
So the three of you just gave three completely different answers, and you were all right. And it started an important conversation, and that's really good. So the question isn't where do we go from here? It's because there's a billion different directions that need to be gone down. But the idea is how many people can we involve in the journey with us, right? So if we're going to better the security posture in blockchain and crypto overall, and if we're going to be able to get to the point where we can answer these more nuanced questions, then what we need is a lot of participation.
Can we entice hacker syndicates to become a part of a official DAO, for instance, right? Like just having like these guys give you the stamp of approval. Back in the day when Anonymous was just massive, like if Anonymous said this, some people would just listen, right? I mean,
so what I do at the blockchain village, which maybe I'll do next year, but what I do there is my job isn't to do anything for blockchain people. My job there is to go to security consultancies and say, hey, look at this cool research people are doing. You should build a vertical like this. And it's to get more participation from the InfoSec community, right? But the thing is, and this is a very, very sad truth, why would anybody want to waste their time and effort building a blockchain vertical when they could just do application security, autonomous vehicle stuff, medical devices, network security, and things of that nature? That's not going to have any problems with the SEC. That's not going to have problems with a lot of other, threatening nation state bodies. So we're on very shaky ground for security consultancies, in my opinion. I sure as fuck, if I had a security consultancy, I would not be building a blockchain vertical.
Well, if you have a security consultancy, all you have to do is tell people to deploy a meme coin and figure it out later. And you know why, right? Because it's a grassroots founded project with no expectation of profit to no individual entity based on a meme with no expectation of value. So the reason meme coins are going so insane is because of that exact fact you just said. That is the skirt to the loophole. I hate meme coins more than anything I could say, but now that I figured out what they're doing, it makes total sense. It literally is the loophole. And by the way, there also isn't a bill in Congress that Biden said he wouldn't veto. So assuming it goes through the Senate, then there will be a huge regulatory change soon. I don't know if you heard about that.
I'm very sorry to take the wind out of anybody's sails, but to consider the words from these know-nothing windbags and to seek their approval or permission is just not going to get us anywhere. I mean,
I completely agree.
The last time I checked was October of 2022, and as of October 2022, there has not been a single person acting on behalf of the U.S. government that has submitted a bit. Not a single Bitcoin improvement proposal from a single one of them.
Fair. I think also for the scale of adoption that we're futurizing on, but we're talking about is global adoption and finding out the security, the risk. How do we solve this problem after? But it's never going to get anywhere if we don't figure those things out first. No one's going to trust it enough.
Right. One thing that I frequently say is that a lot of these blockchain projects, if not all of them, we got to stop thinking of them as technologies and start thinking of them as what they really are, which are exploit tools. They're looking at the Web 2 versions or the legacy versions or the versions that need to have a governmental stamp of approval, and it goes, fuck it, we're going to do it the better way. And the only way to effectively do that is to do so by taking value away from the approved one, right? So these are all exploits, every single last one of them.
But think
about something stupid like Dentacoin.
But they're
think about stupid Dentacoin. That would have put a huge hole in the leg of insurance companies, right?
Yes. But these aren't. I would challenge you on exploits. I would say these are counterfeits, and you know why? Because there's no way to generate a single additional Satoshi on the Bitcoin network, right? Which is kind of the quote unquote standard of the original blockchain formulation. So now these projects have all popped up, kind of like acting like they are, and then they realize that, oh, wow, now we can become we can raise funding without even having to go public, and it's crazy. So I agree with you on that.
I see it more as a transitional period.
Well, all right, so I want to touch base on what Ryan said in the chat too. After you go here, so Nathan, go first. Talk or don't. All right. So Ryan in the chat there said the decentralized web nodes project at Diff, led by Daniel Buchner and funded by Jack Dorsey Square, is trying to solve a lot of the identity stuff based on W3C VCs, ZK proofs, and homomorphic encryption. So for those who don't know what the hell those things are, very quickly, W3 verifiable credentials VC uses W3 VC as standard for verifiable credentials to represent digital identities. They allow for the creation and issuance, and verification of digital credentials such as ID cards, passports, and diplomas. Sounds interesting.
I mean, if a ZK in the simplest sense is like, I look at you and I literally unlock my phone, and you know that I can unlock my phone again, right? You don't have to understand it, but I don't think that's necessarily like the solution. I do believe in ZK rollups and ZK data stored on chain, and my company will be doing that with the models that we release. So I don't know if you guys are familiar with LLM models, but the proprietary ones and will have to have weights plus like kind of the meat of the model, right? But the weights are the proprietary part. So we're going to store those through ZK, which is kind of like, hey, we proved that we can make this model once, we can prove it again. But I'm not fully convinced that would be the solution.
What was the name of it? I'm going to look it up right now.
Yeah. I don't know.
What was the name of it?
So the first thing was W3C verifiable credentials. That's the one that the dude mentioned, Ryan.
Yeah,
then he talks about zero knowledge proofs, or ZK snarks.
Yeah, ZK is, exactly.
Yeah.
Like you don't know my password, but I can show you that I know it.
This is very interesting. Thank you, Ryan.
Yeah.
Good.
And homomorphic. I'm not a homomorphic. Yes, I am. No, homomorphic encryption. That one employs encryption, a type that enables computations to be performed on ciphertext to protect sensitive data and ensure privacy.
Absolutely. Love that.
Doesn't that require a server, though, in the middle?
Probably. I don't know.
I could be wrong, but anyway. Yeah.
And with each of these, like with W3, brain fart, W3C verifiable credentials, the weakness there is the standard's still evolving. There's concerns about complexity and sociability of the VC ecosystem. Zero knowledge proofs, weakness being that they can be computationally expensive and require significant resources to generate.
What if we're generating them? That makes a lot of sense. So if we're generating power from the GPUs, like with what we're doing with his company there, that's what I'm kind of also leaning towards. Like a lot of the problem is that a lot of these things cost so much GPU power. But what if we had that? That's
why Microsoft's pushing these NPUs in their new laptops that they've got a coprocessor that can offload a lot of these computationally intensive tasks. But in order to use that ecosystem, you not only have to give the okay for Microsoft to be able to run shit on your computer without your knowledge of what they're doing, you also have to pretty much use Windows 11 with all of that wonderful AI bullshit that's baked in and telemetry data. And God knows where the heck they're going to send that data they mine off of your computer. And to get an atheist to say God knows, that's pretty freaking good, because like I don't trust them as far as I can throw them. Hell, I don't even have a TPU in my computer. I don't trust what's in that. So like
a TPU or a TPM or
TPU, trusted platform.
TPM, you mean? Trusted
TPM,
platform
unit module, same shit.
You really don't have one of those? I was literally about to ask. I mean, I'm sure they're backdoored by the agent, major agencies. But
you can buy motherboards that don't have them, and and last but not least, encryption can be computationally intensive and can require significant resources. Would be the negative on that one. But you can shit on anything anybody builds, right?
I think that's really good though, because if let's say I know we're not really a hypothetical group right now too much, but if we're getting enough people to do the GPUs, if we have enough of that power, then that becomes a more readily available resource. So we can implement more of these, these kinds of verification tools that will. Right now, they seem like we could never have enough, computing power to actually run them, but that's not saying that wouldn't work if we did.
Yeah, and Ryan also commented there that ZK proof is not ZK rollup. ZK proof is zero knowledge proofs. It means that I can prove I am over 18 without showing you my full date of birth.
Yeah, he's right.
That is a good way of describing that I am a very big fan of using analogies to kind of put shit in terms that most people will understand. So, yeah, I mean, I necessarily didn't know the difference. I had to look it up, and apparently the difference is a ZK rollup is a type of scaling solution that uses ZK proofs to compress and aggregate multiple transactions into a single transaction. And that will allow for a significant reduction in the size of a blockchain and number of transactions that need to be processed. Whereas ZK rollup, multiple transactions are aggregated into a single transaction, and ZK proof is used to prove that the aggregated transactions are valid and correct. This allows the blockchain to process more transactions while increasing the size of the blockchain or number of transactions needing to be processed.
So that's why all the L2s are. So that's why all the L2s are ZK rollups. That makes sense. So a ZK proof would be, I saw your message now about being, 18 or me being able to unlock my phone, but it's not the same. Yeah.
I just looked at it says it's called Ledger Journal. It's a decentralized identity-based blockchain solution for the verifiable credentials.
The more of these buzzwords people throw into what their solution does, the less I trust them, honestly.
It's marketing.
I looked for it specifically.
It's Wi-Fi 7 versus Wi-Fi 6 versus Wi-Fi 5 or 6.
And that just leads to people going to buy a Wi-Fi 7 router that won't connect to all their other devices.
And they don't need it because they're not freaking they're not enterprise, and so, it's absurd. It's all marketing, and again, I've been in marketing my whole career, so forgive me for some of my lack of knowledge and some of the actual technicalities, but the buzzwords are half the sale, and I think we have to kind of move people away from that. However, if the rest of the community is talking about a buzzword in a certain way, if you don't follow suit, then you're either like the outcast, you're not doing things right, or you have to be the trendsetter. And
that's the same reason we see all these projects that have no need for Web3 tossing blockchain into what they do. It's like marketing. If you say you're a Web3 product, you're going to get all that financial backing you want. If you're a traditional Web2 product, you're a dinosaur.
But even AI too, right? Look at AI.
It's such nonsense with what they claim it is versus what actual AI is. It's like, and AI is a whole freaking field, honestly. Like there are people who really know their shit in that, and I don't claim to be an expert, mind you, but I think I know a lot more than a lot of people do about that shit. And like, people get so many of these things wrong about what an LLM can do alone. People get wrong. Understanding of like decision tree logic versus actual artificial intelligence is just mind-blowingly incorrect. And like large language models are pretty much spicy autocomplete, but some of them are really good at it. And it's like there are all these vulnerabilities to these models too, depending on the infrastructure that they're running on, that people are just unaware of. And people will upload like company data to an LLM and not think twice about it. And like that could be like your payroll or something, and they just use it to parse through like file, and like who knows where all the shit you upload to OpenAI ends up when it's removed from their little bucket and then incorporated into their training data. It's
I looked
scary,
it up, and it says they claim that they do not store your data.
Yeah. Well, the one I know that doesn't is Venice. If you look up Venice.ai,
I just asked you about that.
What'd you say?
I just asked you about that earlier.
Yeah, that's Eric Voorhees' company. I've known him a long time, and Eric Voorhees started Shapeshift, which he converted from just being able to trade cryptocurrency assets and kind of like a centralized exchange all the way down to now he's working with Thorchain and a lot of other big players. So I would check out Venice.ai. It's the best uncensored AI model there is, which again, that kind of leads to what's the value of decentralization? Is it needed or is it inefficient? You know?
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of companies that claim your data is going to be safe with them, whether they're an AI tool or a regular, traditional, normal freaking web application. At the end of the day, you got to be very careful where you upload your sensitive data, who you trust with things that are very important to you, especially things that are tied to your financial well-being. And I think way too many people are way too reliant on these AI tools, and the sheer amount of data that's getting scooped up into them. And the only reason you can't access it is because they have safeguards in place. But if you can do a prompt injection attack and then get that data is astonishing. Like,
but that's not even the biggest problem, man. The biggest problem is that people are getting brainwashed by the answers to these questions that they're asking, looking at the AI tool as the source of authority. And that's why I want to.
That is also a real problem too.
Like, yeah, I want to create a totally decentralized like model where like everybody's able to train and help these models and kick the biases from the SF engineers that are mid-30s white guys and just the stereotype, right?
So these models are only as good as their training data, right?
Yeah.
And one of the major issues with these AI models is they are now eating their own shit on the internet, where the stuff they've generated, they're now scooping back up and they're becoming progressively dumber, just like
Idiocracy, the movie.
Yeah. Nathan, you're posting because that's the synced account here. If you want to post directly to YouTube, just go to the video and post under your account because you're like logged in here. So when you post, you're going out to the YouTube as Adrian. I'm sure Adrian appreciates it. We're getting canceled again.
Well, listen, while I'm on, look at that DARPA.mil link I just sent. That's about the Project Civ thing, where DARPA and the Department of Defense are using zero-knowledge proofs. I know at one point that this had something to do with security researchers dealing with vendors and not having to expose themselves to legal recourse as a threat during the disclosure process. But you might want to read through that real quick. It's only about 3 big paragraphs.
So what's the difference in that and like a hash or something? Like, again, I'm not the most technical person in the world, but
hash is an output that's generated after it completes the algorithm.
Like, were they related at all? I don't know. I feel like I've heard that before.
Yeah, I would actually have to look into what that is myself to be able to answer that question. So I don't know what the DARPA's doing there.
Wait, where do I get that link?
Yeah, it's basically you can't reverse.
Yeah,
I thought I was the only one who went to .mil research.
If you're on the YouTube live stream of this video, you can copy and paste it from there. If not, I don't know. I can grab it later and email it to you if you'd like. But right now, let's keep on the topic. So
that was a very valid point with we just have so much data, right? If we had in place a better form of proving our identity, we wouldn't need to be providing all this data all the time, especially our more secure shit.
Absolutely. I think also there needs to be better understanding from like the general population on what to and what not to put on the internet. Like we've got kids nowadays who just don't know, and they grew up with this shit and they just think it's fine to post their whole lives online, which is going to bite them in the ass later. Like we're living in a society now where somebody can look up like a message you put on an online media place like Facebook or Twitter like 10 years later, and now your life is over because the opinions of 10 years from now are going to be very different than the opinions of when you post something. And that's just living forever now in large language models. It's archived essentially. You can't delete your shit that you've ever posted on Twitter, even if you delete those tweets, because there's people who have archives of it, and it's going to eventually get
really?
into
If
these
you know
things.
of any, let me know, because I have a post from one of my old accounts that I really want to pull up. It was a picture I took at this event, and I was like, I would love to get my hands on that.
That's not how the LLM works yet. LLMs work
Not
based
yet,
off of defined data sets, and they evolve for machine
and they
learning.
tokenize that data, and they are able to draw conclusions based on. But there's also the ability where I've seen with prompt injection, where somebody was pretty much asking for a social security number, and they fed it enough data, and it gave the person the actual social security number from the data that was scraped from the web.
Oh,
and
yeah, you mentioned
crazy
that.
Shit that these things can do. Them people who build them don't even necessarily understand everything about how they work.
I know.
Like, you can go back to the GPT-2 model and load that shit into a spreadsheet. That you can understand. You go up to the newer models, the way they're drawing conclusions based on the data is not necessarily not always understandable by human intelligence.
I mean, and it's the multi-model. Now it's the new multi-models, right? Where they combine, like, again, vision, hearing, visual, like everything, right? So it's becoming more and more of a complex disaster. But to your point earlier, I don't think that you don't have to worry about the LLMs like storing data. They might learn from it, but they're not. I don't think they'd be storing all your posts. It's more like the Wayback Machine or web archive. I would say with the LLMs, you have to worry about stupid people. Like, I recently met a CEO of a company who literally copied and pasted his entire code base into Chat GPT, asking for like improvement suggestions. Like, what? Like that could probably be reverse engineered to.
There was actually a white paper about reverse engineering data sent to ChatGPT about 3 months ago, based on packet captures of the network alone. So yeah, there's a lot of stupid people putting shit into these models that sometimes might just use that same input on their training later. It's like, you look at the way they built Copilot for GitHub. And what people have been able to scrape from that LLM when they're just trying to like do programming normally, like if you ask it like, hey, how can I use this API and what's the proper syntax for me to use the AWS key to do X, Y, and Z? Sometimes in the earlier versions of that model, when they do the tab completion, it would include people's API keys that had been uploaded to private repos that you're not supposed to ever see, but it trained on that data that it got, and now you could get somebody's freaking AWS API key and you go spin up a bunch of VMs under their info if you wanted.
Oh, geez.
And there's only so much that once the model is trained and built, you can do to prevent it from spitting shit out that it shouldn't. It's like a cat and mouse game with a lot of these, where they put these restraints and these prompts really in front, saying like, don't answer questions on this, do this or do that. But at the end of the day, if somebody's able to get injection on there and get it to just answer raw without looking at all those filters, it's really weird, the shit that they can pull and what they know versus what they're told they're allowed to say. And I think that's going to be a pretty scary place in the future, especially as they continue to scrape the internet with shit they've generated themselves and get dumber, which is definitely going to happen.
Yeah,
that actually is the most concerning thing to me. But anyway,
like that snake that eats itself,
Yeah.
Or
so what's the answer to that? Like, is the answer just to like allow the 1% to participate in training models, or the what I mean? Like, I
genuinely don't know. I don't know the answer to that. That's a problem for an AI engineer in the future to solve, not for a hacker from today who, like, I read into AI. I find it very fascinating. I even have a Signal group where I post articles about AI that I find interesting. But like, at the end of the day, I'm not an AI engineer. I've never built an LLM. I don't know necessarily how everything works under the hood, but the people who do, like, it's a minefield.
Hey, so I'm reading here on that article that Adrian sent. It says the ZK runs basically rely on post-quantum hardness assumptions for their security. So what would you say that is they're doing? Like just a stronger algorithm. So they're
probably using an algorithm that's resistant to quantum computers being able to break the stuff. And you know what's interesting about that? I've seen not long ago somebody posted that there was a quantum resistant encryption algorithm that was developed that was incredibly difficult for a quantum computer to solve. But then they found that like a dual core Pentium 2 could crack it in like half an hour because it just processes the shit differently and like math is done differently. And like I don't know, I'm not an encryption dude. Like I don't have that high level math brain that some people do. We can get like Colin Cantrell on here another time. He can definitely talk to that shit because he knows that like back of his hand. That ain't me. I'm not that kind of hacker.
Oh, I'd love to hear that guy. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
What do you think it means? So that was the first thing that the ZK proof needed. The second thing it says, so the first one was rely on post-quantum hardness assumption for the security. So we got that. And the second one is reason about statements of reliance on post-quantum cryptography. So what do you think that means? What do you think they're saying?
I mean, I don't know.
Well, Andrew, how does the GPU to making it the hash power work? I think that's what they're talking about. They're relating it that they're solving their own algorithms, so kind of just like they have to know it was being solved.
What Bitcoin is like solving a SHA-256 algorithm to, I guess, derive some kind of a key that will be injected into the next block, which generates it.
Mm-hmm.
With our model, we're actually able to train a model, and as we're training that model and the work that's being put into training the model and the iteration, that becomes the work. So instead of you just spending your money, instead of energy being wasted on, mining Bitcoin, you're actually using your energy to mine both tokens and train AI at the same time. So that's the difference in the way that we do it. Obviously, the consensus is about a 400-page document that I'm not going to go into, but it's similar to what you said.
Oh, this is good stuff with this. So
the seed program that they're talking about there is like a project that wants to make ZK proofs better and more powerful. They want to make it possible to use these zero knowledge proofs for like really complicated shit, important things like military applications, and they're working on making them more efficient and powerful so that they can be used for different shit. Post quantum ZK proofs are like a special kind that are designed to be safe even when somebody uses a quantum computer to try to break them. It's like having a special kind of insurance policy for your secret sauce there. You don't want tell anybody your secret sauce, but at the same time want them to be able to verify that the product they're eating that's built on your secret sauce is actually legit. So your recipe can stay safe, if that's a decent analogy. So like the way I'm understanding this based on what they're writing here is like you're trying to convince somebody you have this super cool secret recipe. It's the best chocolate cake in the world. You don't want to reveal the recipe to them, but you want to be able to sell your chocolate cake to people. So you got to prove to them you've got this amazing recipe without actually telling them what it is. So like that's the zero proof part where you're going to have a special way to prove that recipe without sharing the recipe itself. It's like a magic trick where you show the person you've got it, but don't reveal it so that they can read it.
Or you let them taste it like Coca-Cola, Coca-Cola,
yeah, it's like you can tell the difference between Coke and Pepsi. That's why it's so funny in Little Nicky when he changes a Pepsi to a Coke. That's freaking hilarious.
Yeah, they literally go through this whole spiel in Atlanta when they just literally lock it in.
I wonder when this is. I wonder what year this was written in. From the dark. I wonder what year.
What year is it? So like, the person who wants to prove they've got the recipe, and the person who wants to know, so you got the prover and the verifier there, and they're playing a game together. The prover is going to give you clues about the recipe, and the verifier needs to ask questions to figure out what the recipe is. But the prover has to be very careful to only give out information that doesn't reveal the actual recipe. I guess is how you could frame this. At least that's how my large language model thinks it could be done.
I bet your mind will come up with a totally different answer. I asked the same question.
I use very weird LLMs that most people don't use. So.
Yeah, interesting. Do you use Hugging Face?
Yeah, I use Hugging Face. I've downloaded the backdoor model from Hugging Face once. I'm very glad that was on an isolated network. But yeah, you gotta be careful what you do.
Yeah, there's things called like pickles or whatever. Do you know what those are?
Pickles? Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Cool.
So basically, if you're going to go with any digital identity in the future, you hopefully will want it to be then using the ZK proofs. That's what it looks like.
Yeah,
which is good to know.
Mean, that's the gist of it. But none of us are experts to be able to really speak on it well enough to like tell people like this is what you should or shouldn't do. That's where we need to kind of come together and either, put our collective knowledge hats on. Where like I'm good at straight up infosec shit, old school like Web 2. You talk web apps, network pen testing. I'm your man. Come to this Web 3 stuff. I know a little. I don't claim to be an expert yet. I'm trying to learn. But like I would consider myself like a script kiddie when it comes to this Web 3 stuff, as opposed to some dudes who are out there who really know their shit. The problem is a lot of those dudes who really know their shit, they're hacking. They don't want to come on a podcast and talk about it so that people can understand it, because that's how they make their money, is by really knowing their shit that other people don't understand.
No, they're straight black. And to your point though, that's what needs to be done, because and I also think there's an error, like not to be, offensive in a sense, but I think there's an ego-driven error to a lot of people that are in tech that kind of have high intelligence levels, and I think that's why the adoption to Web3 is a little bit challenging, because a lot of people don't want to admit what they don't know and why they don't know it, right? If there was kind of a more open, like educational platform about how the systems worked and what standards are needed, then I feel like we'd have a lot more adoption from people, that are not so confident in their knowledge, right? So
yeah,
does that make
Nathan
sense?
and I tried to work together to do like educational projects within that space. We tried a few different things. We were going to do this one with our buddy Mike out here, Security Mindset Reset. We actually got a lot of funding from the dudes over at oh my god, my brain is on freaking autopilot. From Colin's company Nexus. They give us like $5,000 in their crypto to put on an event out here in Vegas, and we did really try pretty hard, and we got like Adrian to come out and record it. We got some videos together, but like I think there definitely needs to be more done in education, in not just the blockchain and but the infosec space in general, and the bridge between the two, because there's not a lot out there. A lot of people go off bad assumptions and build entire projects on very shaky foundation, because they just don't know. And I'm not an expert in it yet. I can say like I know more than your average nerd who's into infosec does about blockchain and some AI stuff. But we need people who really like are experts in their field to educate people and help them understand how to do things the right way, so that they can build things a better way going forward, and we don't end up making the same stupid mistakes over and over again and seeing the same stupid hacks take out crypto projects left and right. Because until we can raise the overall standards and have like a free educational platform somewhere that can be used to like, if you make really good documentation and educate somebody and then put it behind a paywall and nobody can access that, what the hell's the point of having built it in the first place? And eventually it's going to get leaked anyway. You're just gatekeeping knowledge. And I'm a hacker, and I'm very much against gatekeeping knowledge. But at the same time, in order to generate that kind of training material, you need people and you need to pay them. So where do you get the money? It's a whole freaking like catch-22. But like we definitely, I agree, need better education, like a platform even where people can go and educate themselves. One of the reasons I love IronGeek is he recorded all the InfoSec cons, because like nobody was doing that. And now he's like, well, let's record them so that they won't disappear forever, so that people can learn on their own time and not have to go to these expensive conferences in places like Las Vegas. You could just, sit at home and watch YouTube and learn everything you need to know. And like, we need the same kind of shit, but in this space, because until we get people who are actually knowledgeable and not just these bullshit artists trying to pitch their company and try and like pitch their project and not actually contribute anything, we're going to keep ending up with people making stupid mistakes and building shitty projects and more fucking NFT where people are selling pictures.
God, I'm going to
like it's look. I have nothing against the people who make money doing like selling NFTs and the artists who make money from their stuff that way. I do shit on it a lot because it's just a really stupid use case for what could have been a really cool technology that could have done so much more. Like think of it like ticket sales for a concert, right? That'd be a great way. Like all this kind of shit you could use that for, and instead we have our proof of case that everybody knows about when you name the technology is those idiots who buy pictures for a lot of money. Is like what everybody thinks. It's fucked up, but it is what it is. Up there goes the monetization I cursed.
It'll be rebranded at some point, but
they already do. Like when certain politicians sell their NFT projects, they don't call them NFTs. They call them things like trading cards.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. Like digital experience is like what we would talk to brands about, which is what I was looking into from like a marketing standpoint. Like, hey, we're giving your brand digital transformation. We're not like selling you NFTs. But going back to what your point earlier, has anyone ever done an analysis to synthesize what all of the hacks have in common or found overlaps and like exploits? Like, has anyone bothered to go that deep into that, or is that something that could be
it sounds like something Sorcerer would probably do.
I wrote that in the thing that we're working on to have basically when you have, because if you're going to have a really large blockchain that scales anything substantial, it's going to need to have a digital twin running on it. Because that's how we're securing, all our infrastructures right now. Like our critical infrastructures, we're using digital twins. So that way, when there's a system down or something, or physical or just software-wise, it can kind of flag that immediately. So I was saying if anytime that it flags, anyone trying to get onto the blockchain, it would kind of record the source and kind of categorize it, kind of like a Malwarebytes, kind of get a database of all the attacks as they're happening and kind of just build its own model so that it kind of, and then like categorizing by families and all that. So you just have this like ongoing, as people are trying to penetrate different systems, you have it being like, categorized and everything right for you. Endless database to attacks.
Oh, that'd be a very interesting data set to look through. I don't know if anybody's ever built anything like that off the top of my head, but it would certainly.
I don't think they could have yet. I don't think they would have been able to yet.
I mean, if you're going to go based on statistical analysis alone, there might be some interesting shit that's already out there from like what's already been written to the blockchain. Doing it in real time is a whole other ballgame.
Someone started a blockchain Isaacs. I'm not sure who it was, but I think it's Trail of Bits is on it. Some other contributors as well, but there's a blockchain Isaacs.
I like Trail of Bits. They used to sponsor SummerCon every year when I would volunteer there and like work the door. Good people, and they also gave it really good swag. So good for them.
What's it called? I know Trail of Bits, but what is it called? Isaacs?
Nathan, that's a question for you.
Yeah.
ISAC?
I was just trying to see.
Yeah.
I just want to throw in, I didn't want to say that, this is what we should all use now. I meant, I was just looking at the technology that they uses and thinking of how we went up in our algorithms, like from, Diffie-Hellman to RSA. We know RSA is better, and even if I don't know how to solve a cryptic algorithm by hand, I still know that one is more secure.
Right. Don't use RSA.
Oh yeah, you mean AES is probably what you were saying.
Yeah, look, there's different encryption algorithms, all that stuff. I studied that in college years ago. And
did I.
I don't claim to be an expert in encryption. Like that's not my freaking forte. I can explain the difference between asymmetric and symmetric encryption, and I can talk to a bunch of different points there. But like, if you want the nitty gritty on like how Rigendale differs from AES, I cannot go there. Like that's not my brain, But we do know people who can, and that's why
it would definitely be cool to talk to somebody who's working in the digital identity, field right now. I think I might know somebody.
There's a con coming in town not long from now. It's going to be all about digital identity shit.
I'll be there.
Try and sneak into it just so that I can, say that I snuck into a conference all about identity, just like I did when the FBI was.
I'll go with you. No,
just wear a mask.
I'll go with you. No one will suspect us.
Let's go straight
Nobody
up
would suspect somebody sneaking into an identity conference with a fake badge. Nah.
No, dude, you gotta go Tom Cruise style, You gotta go Mission Impossible, bro. You gotta get that mask on.
Just go the I'm press route. That usually works. Of course, you need to actually sometimes submit some proof for that.
Yeah. Well, there seems like we have a ton more to talk about, but I know we're probably coming up on time. How long? Not sure.
Generally, 2 hours is about the runtime for these. We can go maybe another half an hour if you all have a little bit more time.
Yeah.
So Nathan, what else was on your sheet of things you want to talk about today?
I think we're pretty well off track, so I don't think there's too much sense in trying to bring it back on. But I am going to tap out because I'm down in Pensacola and I'm not home and I got stuff I'm trying to accomplish.
Sounds good. Next time, send me some show notes ahead of time. We can definitely stay on track.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, thanks everybody. I am going to log out, and I don't think it should end the cast, would it?
Nope, because I'm here too, and we're on the same account.
Nice. All right, fantastic. Bye, everybody.
Take care, Nathan.
Cool.
Hey.
Yeah, that was good. It just shows me how many topics there are, and it's crazy because, like, as much as I look at you, like, it's just like I see like how many things you know that I don't know in a sense, right? And but at the same time, it's like most people just don't admit what they don't know, right? And I think that's kind of an inherent problem in technology.
I like to ask a lot of questions because I never claim to know anything that I don't know. But I like to know things, so I'll always ask. So I'm going to ask you something real simple here, real basic. Layman's terms, answers only. Like sometimes you just got to be explaining something on the most basic of level to kind of understand more complex stuff that people are talking about. Because sometimes it's like if I knew the basic understanding, then I could at least have more understanding of the higher level concepts that you're bringing up. So to know things at a lower level and just the most simplistic form kind of just gives you a lot more knowledge. So even if you just start asking questions about anything, it really helps.
Yeah, and like I am always happy to talk shop when it comes to InfoSec stuff with people because it's something I'm very passionate about and I have been my whole life. So when people like have a question, I'm very happy to just engage in like talk ad nauseum until they get bored and walk away because that's like just the kind of nerd that I am. I'm not a fan of the people who try to gatekeep shit and be like, yeah, I figured this out and I'm not going to tell you how I did it. Go figure it out yourself. It's like, yeah, you're interested in this? Let me sit down with you and walk you through how I figured it out and like teach you what you need to know to understand even like the basics. And I think a lot of our people in our hacking community used to be very much like that. Like you look at the Hackers Manifesto, which is written by this dude, The Mentor. It's like another one got caught today. And it goes on this whole tangent. But the whole point of it is about spreading knowledge and being in complete awe and fascination of technology and wanting to learn how it works so that you can not only understand for yourself, but help others better their life. And that's been lost. Like so many people are not wanting to help anybody and they're very selfish nowadays. But then again, we also have really great people in our industry too, who I even look up to, who do stuff for free and put out knowledge. So it's not a lost cause. It's just there's a lot of improvement we can make.
Yeah, that's an interesting concept. It's like, how can we come together to show people what they don't know? And these crypto and AI minds who are just think they're so far advanced, right? It's like
because we're not asking the right questions.
Yeah, but it tends to be to create something like, we will hack you,
The answer is
like
42. No, look, when it comes to hacking, right, there's so much shit that goes into it and so many like subfields of hacking. It's like I know dudes who are awesome hardware hackers who know shit I would never freaking be able to figure out on my own. And like I am in awe of them, and I think they're like freaking amazing. Like this dude, Ong Chu, I always say his name wrong, over at Red Balloon. in New York. He invited me out to his lab and he showed me all the shit he's working on and like satellite hacking and all these projects he's involved in. And I'm like, how does anybody have the time in the day to learn all this shit and like be so knowledgeable in so many different things? But that's not me. I am just Frank who works his 9 to 5 and like constantly reads InfoSec articles and does pen testing on the weekends. And like I can explain a lot of stuff to you, but I'm not an index. Like I can't always know everything about everything.
It's kind of hard, yeah.
Yeah, it does make me. I mean, I'm telling you, what I've taken away from this though really is that we've got to come up with a new paradigm for like Web3 because it's just different. Like, think about it, guys. There is no reactive in Web3. Your money is either there or it's gone. It's a 1 or a 0. So we have to come up with a whole new paradigm shift. You can't just prevent exfiltration of data, right? You can't just block people from getting to you. You can't just ignore social engineers who will talk to your, secretary. You know what I mean? There's things that need to be done. So it kind of makes me think that there has to be an initiative where, imagine if I worked with Consensus next year and, you and some of your, savvy guys who do the pen testing, you challenge the conference to say, look, I want to show you guys how much crypto I could have stolen at this conference if no one changed anything. Like that would be a mind-blowing.
One of the caveats there is, being ethical, right? So in order to get that kind of data, sometimes you have to act unethically. And, disclosure was a huge thing in InfoSec. I don't know how familiar you are with it, but back in the day, if you found a vulnerability and told the company about it, a lot of dudes got sued just trying to explain to a company, hey, you have an issue you got to fix, and here's how you could fix it. And the company gets litigious, and the next thing you know, you're freaking paying for a lawyer for months to try and deal with it.
The good news about a DAO is that there's no one at the helm. Somebody in the DAO found the bug.
Dread Pirate Roberts theory. I get it. Like Dread Pirate Roberts.
Yeah, so that's what I'm saying. If it's a collective of people, and then some spokesperson from the DAO says, look, we could have hacked this many crypto and we have, proofs, or we could have stolen this much crypto, we have proofs, that would wake the industry up. And I fear it would either deter people from.
I don't think that would be good. I think that's what it would do at this point. I think it would halt. So basically, instead of just kind of saying, hey, this is how, we just have to know that we can in those ways, and then propose them solutions and push people towards already incorporating if we found the vulnerabilities, if we knew the patches and kind of present, had people moving towards the direction where they're already starting protecting themselves from those things that we already know.
So what about a forum for CVEs that could affect crypto applications or something? Or
to separate it out, you might as well just use the existing forms for CVEs. CVE details being a good one, or exploit DB, those already exist to go look that kind of stuff up. And a lot of the times these vulnerabilities are already very well detailed in places that you can go find. It's a matter of educating the people who are building the stuff in the first place, not to build it stupidly. And we still have that problem with regular web app developers who graduate college with a degree in web development, but it's all about design stuff and they don't know anything about security, and they make very stupid mistakes. The same thing happens in a lot of these projects where you see people oh, this dude stole this crypto from this project, but then he gave a lot of it back. That's cool, but why was he able to do that? Or why was the project so vulnerable? And how can you in good conscience then put money into a project that had so much money stolen from it because of a design flaw without thinking, oh, there's probably another design flaw that I could use? It's very scary. And a lot of these systems are very complicated, and to get under the hood requires multiple different skill sets from different people. It's hard to find somebody who's got all of them in that same brain. And a lot of people who have these skill sets don't work well together with others.
You gotta have a big, it's like a big org of part-time people that come together. And I think that in like you said, the hacker realm, there's been communities that have existed since the beginning of time, right? So in the regular world, if you're not in a video game joining a guild, or you're not in kind of a hacker society, it's there's very little, like, I guess, what is it, honor among thieves, right? Where people are just out rogue or whatnot. So I think there needs to be like a legitimate, like, blockchain only guild / DAO / association that literally just comes after organizations, like showing them the exploits and like just doing the white hat thing of like giving the money back or not taking it, But I
All right, so
know,
what about this? What about this perspective, right? So what I'm getting is the blockchain. So I just am a little confused about why we're saying it's harder to trace. Like, so if the blockchain will have just as many vulnerabilities as the current, tools that we're using, not tools, I don't know what you want to call the internet, but if it has the same amount of vulnerabilities, right?
it doesn't have the same, but yeah.
Well, it has equivalent types. It's equally as the same great amount of attack surface. So, what was I gonna say? Basically, we could protect ourselves better because it's the same threats, but like we could just make different steps that will protect us better. It's gonna get basically you're gonna get hacked. You're gonna get these things are gonna keep happening. So how do we just if we could just do it over?
The point is we can look back through blockchain and see where the hacks happened, how they happened. There's no manipulation to the database unless there's a 51% attack. So I think we have to use blockchain and actually use the technology to look back and say, how did these hacks happen? And you can literally watch them all, right? Whereas like if another database gets, some SQL injection or whatever it is, right? Like, it's not public. You're never going to be able to see it. And as a
it's more transparent.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm saying it should be the easiest way to rally people behind because you can all see the same problem.
That's what I'm saying. So like if we're having all these problems now on our current economy, our current everything that we're doing, this would just we'd have the same problems, but we'd be able to fix them easier. We'd be able to, make quicker changes. We'd be able to actually like use the technology that we have to fix things. And the fact that they're, especially for law.
What happened? Cut out for me here. You guys there?
Hey, can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Let me make this.
I think we had a little hiccup there.
Let me make this into an analogy for you, okay? So,
sure.
When I walk into a room and if I have like if I'm the one who stole it and I have it in my pocket, and you're not gonna know, you'd have to search through every person to find me. But let's say it's all transparent, so now I have nowhere to hide anything. I still stole it, but you're going to find me a lot easier.
But you think that's true, or are you saying that's true, or you think that's true? Because it's definitely not true in terms of being able to use something like Tornado Cache API, use a mixer, swap out to Monero, which uses ring signatures, and then even use the L2 on top of Litecoin to obfuscate everything, So I wouldn't say it's that easy, Bitcoin is very traceable, put it that way, but the other networks are not.
So in that regard, just a few things. So first, there's a lot of crossover between the types of vulnerabilities you'll see on like a web application and some of the stuff that's out here built on Web3 technology. But there's little differences and nuances that a lot of us as like your typical pen tester, we don't know. It's not like the people who actually end up exploiting these things tend to be people who also work in that space, who really understand the technology at a deeply fundamental level. And I think a lot of the people who end up hacking these things are people who are actually working for competing projects, like, because there's a whole specific set of knowledge that goes into blockchain, and like a lot of that's very parallel to what we see in people who are very good at database hacking, not just SQL injection, but like actual getting deep under the database and knowing how it works and being able to do things it's not intended to do and get data out of it in ways that it's not supposed to give. And these people who end up robbing crypto exchanges, like the dudes from MIT who did something like not long ago, a lot of them really like spend a long time planning and even testing out how they're going to conduct these attacks before they really do them. Where your typical pen test is not going to be, it's like 2 weeks. We don't even have time usually to like maybe set up a copy of an application and then try to hack it. We normally rely on what's already been built because it's a time frame kind of thing. So
Or
if you're going to
not
talk
been
like
built,
a true
right?
red team operation,
Like, do you do it
which is
before it's been built or like after it's been built? Because I was thinking in crypto, like there's no before and after, right? It's like
right.
it's
So
like
it's
the
a
stakes
different
are so much higher. You know, imagine like it's almost a new paradigm that needs to be created in terms of pen testing and hacking, right? For crypto, it's
paradigm
like
shift. Yeah,
it's
it's a
like got to be like
completely
a
different.
thousand
And
x
while there's
pan.
definitely some similarities to the shit that's already out there, it's a whole new ball of wax. And like, not everybody who knows how to hack one thing knows how to hack another thing. Just like I'm not a great hardware hacker, even though I've dumped firmware from a phone. Like, there's people who are such like they blow me out of the water in that regard. And there's different people who are just very good at specific things, and blockchain and this whole ecosystem is like it's a niche that yeah, there have been some cool attacks we've seen publicly that came out. I'm sure there's a lot more that have happened that we've never heard about, like because not a lot of these things are publicly disclosed where they're going to let us know what happened if they can get away with it, like the Mount Gox guy. He certainly wouldn't have ever publicly disclosed he had been hacked or sold the company to the other guy who then got hacked several more times. We only found out about that because at the end of the day, they ran out of money to keep a pyramid scheme going. Not that crypto's a pyramid scheme, mind you, but what they were doing specifically was. And like we see it repeatedly, like same kind of patterns that exist. But to be able to replicate that requires a lot of knowledge that not most regular hackers who specialize in the things, at least that I do, or that a lot of my friends who are in this industry do, have the foundational knowledge to understand. So there needs to be like better education around that space in order to educate people not only to secure it better, but to understand it who don't necessarily come from that background. So that's what I was trying to get at.
That's in it, but doesn't that alone right there make like using a blockchain more secure because less people know how to hack it?
That's a good question. And at the end of the day, I'm not the person who's qualified to answer it. So,
you know, I'm just saying, especially number one, it's going to be harder to hack, and number two, it's transparent, so it's going to be harder to get away with theft of any asset.
How long did it take those guys to get arrested? The MIT guys.
It took about a year to get them, I think. Yeah. But you know what I mean? Like the fact that we do like there are those that do understand how it works, but we get to we know that is it if not as many people know how to hack it right now, it already gives it an advantage because there are so many ways to hack. I mean, even when it comes to physical security and when you're tapping your credit card, or the ones that didn't do the mandated update your their gas station pump to accept the tap list. You know what I mean? Like, but we didn't know how to hack it. Like, they have to keep coming up with new things that they don't have right now.
But to draw parallel to your gas station attack, right?
Yeah.
And that one, the thing that happened there was people figured out that people are going to use NFC to pay for gas. But there's still that old school card reader there that you can stick your card into. So they just drilled out the NFC things and forced people to go and fall back to the earlier version and stick their card in there that had their skimmer on it. And same thing with a lot of these blockchain technologies that are going to rely on fallback to earlier encryption.
Yeah, they call it the old tech.
Yeah.
So I was actually just thinking that too. So when we do more of this transition to the blockchain, we're still going to be very reliant on the old tech, or what we know as the current things that we use now. So we're going to really have to be like thinking of, especially more like the security is going to be huge moving forward. How we go about this and how we integrate all of our current technology with the future upgrades.
Yeah, so at the end of the day, I mean, there are some really smart people in the blockchain space, and there are some good resources out there for people who do want to learn more about it. I don't think too many colleges are teaching classes on like how to properly build a smart contract or how
I think we're going to be phasing out smart contracts.
But in the future, that's something I think that we need to do is we need to reinvest in education so that people can understand the technology better. Because just because you don't understand it doesn't mean it's more secure. To your question before, like, doesn't it mean that the blockchain is more secure because there aren't as many people who know how to hack it? I mean, that's one way of looking at it. But the other flip side of that is the few people who are really good at hacking it could really screw all those people over who put trust in them if they decide to do, like, for instance, a supply chain attack, like we saw with OpenSSH with the lib LZMA library upstream. If somebody's got the ability to contribute code to one of these projects that gets put into it, and then, there are still people who get trusted in these companies, whether they're a DAO or a typical Web3 company. You still have people contributing code changes somewhere. And if one of those people decides to be an asshole, I mean, you can screw over a lot of people and they can make off with a lot of money. And it happens a lot. And that's why I think a lot of people are still so hesitant to put money into digital crypto or like even any kind of digital currency, and even especially the central bank digital currency, which I certainly am not a fan of.
Yeah,
but
we're gonna have to work on that for sure. Yeah, so why don't we stop there and say that we're gonna keep up this hacker blockchain going on Wednesday, right?
What is it?
Yeah, if you guys are down, I'll do another cast with you on Wednesday. We could do it at your house or online or whatever.
Yeah.
All right, we'll make it happen.
And just for the audience, sorry, in terms of like kind of the Web3 Twitter spaces and broadcast we do, it's just like almost like fireside candid, just go around the block. So we apologize if we led everyone astray from the original topic. We'll be ready next time.
I don't think it's too bad of an issue there. So generally, when I used to do casts to keep everybody on topic, I had a set of show notes. And if we veered too far from the topics of the day, we try and kind of pull back. But I think having a good banter and being able to go a little bit off topic really drives a good podcast. Like you listen to Joe Rogan, who's like the number one podcaster in the world, whether or not you agree with whatever he says, he just does conversations with people and talks to them and learns about what they're interested in. And I think that's a really good format, honestly.
Yeah.
And I think people watch it. Like we used to have a lot of people who would come in, like tune into our podcast when we did it every week. And I very much appreciate all those people. Like they liked the engagement with just us talking to one another. It wasn't so much the news about InfoSec that I'd read, but the conversations we'd all have about it. So I don't think we need to worry about having gotten too far off topic. It's not something we necessarily need to apologize to, but going forward, I think we're going to have some kick-ass podcasts, have some people on who can explain shit way better than I can when it's a subject that I don't know the most about. And I very much look forward to the future. So let's keep on kicking ass and chewing bubble gum. But I'm all out of gum.
I'm excited.
All right. Thank you, everybody.
All right, guys. Thank you for coming, and thank you for viewing, audience. This has been the Countersurveil podcast. We'd like to thank our guests, Andrew and Karen Klein, Nathan, and Adrian Crenshaw. Not that Nathan's last name is Crenshaw, mind you, but I blanked on it. Thank you all for coming and watching us talk for 2.5 hours. I hope you all have a wonderful day. Good rest of your week. And Ultron22, I see your comments, man. I don't know how to respond to that, but I hope you are okay, and I do wish you very well. So thank you all, and have a very great night. Take care.
All right, be safe, everybody.
All right, take care.
Take care.
That was pretty cool.
Flossy through the smog. Countersurveil, join the blog. Information overflow. What we reap is what we sow. In this world of endless glow, facts we need to truly know. Hackers in the digits crawl. Watch your back, they'll break your wall. Countersurveil standing tall. Together we decode it all. Listen close, it's closer than it seems. Face the flossy through the smog. Countersurveil, join the blog. Information overflow. What we reap is what we sow. In this world of endless glow, facts we need to truly know. Information overflow. What we reap is what we sow. In this world of endless glow, facts we need to truly know. Hackers in the ditches crawl. Watch your back, they'll break your wall. Countersurveil standing tall. Together we decode it all. Hypno dreams and data streams. Listen close, it's closer than it seems. Face the flossy through the smog. Countersurveil, join the blog. Hackers in the ditches crawl. Watch your back, they'll break your wall. Countersurveil standing tall. Together we decode it all. Hackers in the digits crawl. Watch your back, they'll break your wall. Countersurveil standing tall. Together we decode it all. Break your wall, Countersurveil standing tall. Together we decode it.